The world began with a bang. Then came the kings and the states. We tried to figure it out, debating all of our fates.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really provocative book by Robert Reich called The System. And it asks a huge question. Has America stopped being a democracy and turned into an oligarchy? Let's get right into it. So the book kicks off with a question that's pretty uncomfortable, one that really challenges a core American belief. It asks, point blank, is the system actually rigged? That's the central premise we're going to be exploring. Now, to really get to the heart of his argument, Reich says we have to completely rethink how we view politics in America. We have to reframe the entire conflict. He introduces this key term, oligarchy. So what is it? It's the idea that a small, incredibly wealthy elite has managed to get control of society's most important institutions, and that gives them power over everyone else. And he's not talking about some kind of shadowy conspiracy here, but a very visible, structural shift in who actually holds the power. And this is where that crucial reframing comes in. Reich argues that the old labels of left versus right are basically a distraction now. The real fight, he says, is between democracy, which is supposed to represent the many, and oligarchy, which represents the powerful few. So, you might be asking, how does an oligarchy like this keep its power and even expand it? Well, the book lays out this self-reinforcing loop that it calls the vicious cycle. At the very core of this cycle is a simple but powerful idea. Power and wealth have become inseparable. They're totally locked together in this feedback loop where each one just fuels the other. Let's break down how that actually works. Okay, so the cycle plays out in 4 stages. First, a huge amount of wealth gets concentrated right at the very top. Second, that wealth is then used to buy political influence. We're talking lobbying, campaign donations, all that. Third, that influence is used to literally rewrite the rules of the economy in their favor. And then finally, those new rules funnel even more wealth back to the top, which of course restarts the whole cycle, but with even more momentum. Reich argues this whole cycle got kicked into overdrive because of 3 huge changes in our system. First, the power of unions collapsed, which used to be a big check on corporations, and monopolies started to grow. Second, Wall Street got heavily deregulated. And third, the entire purpose of corporations shifted from serving all stakeholders, that means their employees, their customers, their communities, to just maximizing profits for shareholders above absolutely everything else. Now, a system like this can't just operate out in the open, right? It needs a story, a narrative to justify itself. Reich calls these the grand illusions that are used to hide where the power really is. And this leads us to one of the biggest myths the book tries to tear down. This idea of a free market that just exists naturally, completely separate from the government. Reich's point is that this is totally false. The government always sets the rules of the game. And this really clarifies what the debate is actually about. It's not a question of more government versus less government. The real question is, who do the government's rules benefit? Is it the wealthy and powerful, or is it everybody else? This brings us to another one of the book's really central concepts, this idea of a 2-tiered system. And one of those tiers is what Reich calls, pretty provocatively, socialism for the rich. Yeah, the contrast here is pretty stark. For the wealthy, you see bailouts, you see subsidies, you see flexible bankruptcy laws. But for pretty much everyone else, there's harsh accountability, safety nets that are falling apart, and much, much stricter rules when they run into hard times. And I mean, there is no clearer example of this than the 2008 financial crisis. You had millions of everyday Americans facing foreclosure, while the huge banks that helped cause the crisis got these massive government bailouts. For instance, JP Morgan got $25 billion with almost no strings attached. But this book isn't just about diagnosing the problem. After laying out exactly how the system is rigged, it offers a path forward, a way to actually fix it. The solution here isn't about small tweaks. It's about a fundamental shift in power. The goal is to break that vicious cycle we talked about by getting big money out of politics, by rebuilding the power of citizens through broad coalitions, and by creating a real check on corporate and Wall Street influence. What's really crucial here is that Reich argues that reversing this whole cycle isn't some fantasy. Why? Because it's been done before.
He points back to the Progressive Era, a time when organized citizens actually managed to break the power of the robber barons during America's first Gilded Age.
And all of this brings us to the final, really haunting question that just hangs over the entire book. Can these two powerful forces, democracy and extreme, concentrated wealth, truly exist at the same time? In the end, we're left with this really stark warning, first said by Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis. It suggests a choice has to be made, and that choice, according to this system, is really the central challenge of our time.